And we are live.
Well, good morning, folks and witnesses on Zoom. It is Thursday morning, April 7th, and we're going to have a conversation with some diversified agricultural producers this morning, and trying to hear what their issues are and how things are going with their particular operation, and if there's anything that we might be able to do to assist them. Pardon me. And another issue that I don't know if any of the witnesses have been into natural resources or heard from them in regards to testifying on H466, which is a surface water bill that if you draw water from a stream or to take care of your plants, about reporting on that and keeping track of the amount you're using. So we have 4 witnesses scheduled, and I believe Hannah's with us, and Chuck Worcester. And so good morning, Hannah, and maybe you could tell us a little about your operation and where you're located, and we'll ask questions maybe at the end or as you're going through. But it's kind of we run kind of a loose committee and try to make everybody feel like it's a round table discussion if at all possible. So hopefully we'll operate in the same manner. So welcome and good morning.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your time this morning. My name's Hannah Doyle. I own and operate Boneyard Farm in Fletcher, Vermont. We're right on the Franklin County, Lamoille County line, literally on the town line. And I raise non-GMO pastured eggs, chicken, pork, and lamb eventually. I have breeding ewes right now that will be a flock of sheep eventually breeding, and we hope to sell lamb and wool at our farm stand and farmers market. I also grow vegetables and cut flowers and herbs, and I make a line of value-added products, mostly canned goods like jam and pickles and chutney. So I do a little of everything, and I think that's sort of what you want to talk about today. And I'm definitely interested to hear questions because I'm not sure exactly what how I can advise, or what you're looking to know. But I'm happy to tell you a little bit about where we are at. We just purchased a 180-acre formerly conventional dairy last year, about a year ago. And we are sort of rehabbing it into a diversified operation. So we're at the very beginning of a startup phase here on our property. We've been farming for 5 years or so, but now at a much larger scale. My husband also owns a construction business. So we have 2 small businesses and 2 small kids, and we are definitely overwhelmed with all of the work and the potential, but we've been met with a lot of support and demand from our local community. So we feel really grateful for the opportunity to be producing food and hopefully stewarding this land in a way that improves environmental conditions and provides a good life for our animals and our family. So right now, you know, just this spring, we are renovating that former dairy barn into a multi-use facility. So we're jackhammering out curbs and removing stanchions and putting in a walk-in cooler. Last year, we built a farm stand into the front of the dairy barn. So the big sliding door opens to the public. And on weekends, people can come and get a wide variety of food from our farm stand. So we're building perimeter fencing. We're constructing greenhouses. We are building mobile hen houses so that our laying hens can be pastured and rotationally grazed. We're really just establishing lots of systems right now. And it's a really exhausting phase to be in, but it's also very exciting. And, I think because we have so many small enterprises, we often don't feel like we fit as farmers. Like where we were in Bakersfield prior, people would see me at the farmer's market and say, oh, I didn't know there was a farm on Witch Cat Road, because they don't see Holsteins and they don't see a tractor and they don't see a big barn. And now we have the big barn and we have the road frontage, but I still don't own a tractor. I do most of the vegetable work by hand, and it's all drip irrigation. I don't have employees. I'm a very small farmer with many different enterprises. So, I'm moving pastured fences for my sheep every day, and I'm out there collecting eggs and washing them by hand. And I don't always feel like I look like a farmer to the typical Vermont consumer, maybe. So I think one of the things I wanted to just address is maybe that sort of public education about what diversified farming looks like in Vermont. I think especially as we kind of shift toward a model that maybe includes more diversified agriculture in Vermont. And, it's in our agricultural history. There used to be hill farms all over the state that produced a little of this and a little of that for their immediate communities. And to me, it seems like we are going back in that direction a little bit, and I'm proud to be part of that change. But I think, just the fact that diversified farming is farming, and a farmer might look different in 2022 than 1980. That's an important component, I think. I also would say that affordable healthcare and affordable childcare would go a long way to help all farmers, myself included, here with 2 little kids and trying to kind of do it all 7 days a week. We're definitely feeling the pressure of that, and we're self-employed, so health insurance is very difficult. But I think a lot of technical support exists, and I feel grateful to be farming in Vermont. There are so many resources available to us. We're still just sort of sorting through them all, honestly, and saying, okay, if it's almost like a flow chart is needed. Okay, if you want to do this, you talk to NRCS, and if you want to do this, you talk to UVM Extension, and there are these resources, and here's how you access them. So we're very grateful for all of the resources that do exist and all of the funding opportunities that do exist. We're just really in this not unique, but pivotal starting point for our farm business. And then I think another thing that I've noticed is there seems to be a lot of funding for larger farms that have an environmental problem already, and not a lot of funding for farms who are starting out and designing and implementing infrastructure systems. So, just as an example, I reached out and talked to the pasture and surface water fencing program about perimeter fencing and a main line of water for our rotationally grazed sheep. And they said the cutoff is 15 sheep and you have 13, so we're like not quite big enough to access those pools of money in lots of cases. And we also, because we're new on this property, we don't have water quality concerns yet. Our livestock are not grazing in a stream, so we don't need to fence them out. We don't have manure management problems because we're small and starting out, but we want to set off on the right path. And design systems that are going to work for the environment and for our farm business from the get-go. So
Heather, what was the deal on the fencing? You were too small. What was that? Could you repeat that again?
sure, it's Hannah. I reached out to the UVM and I think Department of Ag. There's a program called Pasture and Surface Water Fencing. And so they help you to establish perimeter fencing if needed, and sometimes run water to animals. So, you know, I was interested in some funding to help us build a perimeter fence for our sheep pasture and lay out a black pipe basically to bring hoses to our sheep so that when we're moving them daily or every 3 days or so, we're not dragging hoses all over the farm. And they told me that they're happy to talk about it and we might be able to work something out. But for right now, the cutoff is 15 sheep and I have 13. So that's just, you know, a small anecdote to sort of illustrate that sometimes we're not quite, because we have many different things. You know, I've got 13 sheep, but I've got 2 pregnant sows right now. So they'll have piglets soon, but I don't quite qualify for this. And, you know, I've got laying hens that are on pasture, but sometimes the bureaucracy doesn't really see laying hens as grazing stock. So it doesn't count if I'm applying for rotational grazing programs and things like that. Just diversified agriculture sometimes can, by its nature, put you in a tricky position.
Did you check with ASCS on the fencing? Because they have a fencing program as well, I believe. And that's your county, USDA, your county organization.
Yeah, are you thinking of an EQIP program through NRCS?
No, it's through the USDA, your Agricultural Services Organization within your county. It's a federal issue, a federal program. And they may have, I know they have a fencing program, especially for perimeter fence. And so you may want to check with them in regards to the, you know, what they give and what you have to do to qualify.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I wrote that down and I'll look into it. That's a great example of me just not knowing what opportunities exist. And the other thing is, you know, we feel pretty strongly that it's not necessarily government's role to fund our business. You know, it's a business. And so we tend to cash flow things ourselves and build the fence ourselves, build the greenhouse ourselves, you know? So yeah, I'm, you know, personally just not sure what the role of government in a business like farming is. So happy to be part of this conversation.
Yeah.
If I might just say one thing, this is the second time I've testified to this committee this year. And the second time I've been listed as a co-owner of my farm, while all of my male counterparts are listed as owners. And it is likely just a clerical issue. If so, we can absolutely correct that. But I just, you know, my husband and I own this land together, but Boneyard Farm is a single member LLC owned by me. And I wonder how many of my male counterparts are co-owners, in fact. So I think, you know, it might just be worth mentioning to consider the role of women in agriculture.
Yeah. Well, that must be a clerical issue that our clerk, you know, just thought being in 2 names, it was both, but we'll get that squared away for you. And Chris had a question, I believe. Senator Pearson?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. And I was the person that passed your name along. I think it came to me from NOFA that way as co-owner. So we'll run it up the food chain, but thank you for pointing that out. I don't really have a question, more of a comment. I just want to say you're uncovering a lot of just the cultural dynamics that I'm interested in seeing challenged in the sense of what is Vermont's agriculture today? What is it going to be in the future? And I think there's an incredibly important role for farmers like you, diversified ag. In many cases, I hear wonderful examples of reclaiming land that had been held by dairy, in many cases conventional dairy. So maybe we would argue some of those natural resources depleted, and folks that are trying a new model that will actually be very good for soil health, likely for water quality, and contribute to the ag economy. This is not to burden you because you're one player in actually thousands of similar farmers. But the fact is, here in Senate Agriculture, I've been on this committee now for 5 years, Mr. Chair. I'm losing count. Maybe it's 3 years. We hear a lot from dairy. They are very well organized. They have lobbyists. They have, and there's what? Are we lucky to still have 700 dairy farms?
No, more like 5 or 550.
Yeah. As I understand it, Hannah, maybe you can correct me. There's some 4,000 smaller diversified producers like you guys. And I just think it's really important. And NOFA, Rural Vermont, and others, there's a Berry Growers Association, they're getting more regular in our process. But the fact is, we hear from dairy not because of anything other than just that's the way it's been. And so I just want to encourage you and anyone else we talk to along these lines to just remember us and tell us what's going on. We just, a few years ago when the pandemic hit, we scrambled to figure out how to help farmers and how to help. Dairy was sort of straightforward in terms of money and connecting to the farms. And the Agency of Agriculture told us that they didn't know. They simply did not have a list of people that were farming that were not dairy. I mean, I was gobsmacked by that. And so we're making inroads. We push them. They are now starting to have that registry, just in the sense of a communication availability. But so it's not kind of fair to ask you this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Just please keep leaning on us. Please keep telling us your stories. Tell us, we've set up a lot of programs in a recognition of the growing diversity and need for our food systems, whether it's working lands and other kinds of grant programs. My sense is those tend to be slightly bigger awards, and folks like you, as you talk about a fencing award, is smaller, too small for working lands, but a key need and a way for you to contribute to the ag economy and stewarding the land. And so just helping us hear those stories is incredibly valuable. And I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're in a phase where, I'm applying for grants that are in the $5,000 to $20,000 range, and some I'm getting and some I'm not. But those are the kinds of scales of the project. I can build a wash pack station for my vegetable operation for less than 20, but it would make a huge difference to the overall viability and future of my farm.
Right. We used to have, well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's fine, Chris. Go ahead.
Well, there was I looked into this a little bit. There was, through the agency, a wash pack, is that what we call it? A grant program that was federally funded. It sort of hangs there in limbo because there's no money. And I actually do think that is a place we could look to put, a real modest amount of money could go a long way for farmers like Hannah.
The washing station, you didn't qualify for that grant, Hannah?
I applied for a different grant through NOFA for funding to do that project this year, and I will reapply. But I think what Senator Pearson is talking about is the food safety grant that used to exist for farmers like myself.
Yeah. and
Yeah,
there
you-
should
Just an
be
example
money
of a
for that.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, that program, Mr. Chair, is still there. You can still go to the website, but there's no money, so it's effectively on hold.
They've
And
never come and asked, the agency never even told us that they ran out of money for that. I mean, but anyways, we'll get that on our list of things, to ask them about. Yeah, it's really weird how everything operates. The
Well,
agency can't come and ask for anything that's not in their budget, or they get their hands slapped from whoever they present their budget to before we ever get to see it. So sometimes people like yourself, Hannah, have to tell us, well, they told us they were all out of money, and then we can add it, but they can't come and ask for it. It's kind of a crazy process, but I believe Senator Collmore had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, much in line with Senator Pearson, not so much a question as a comment, although I do have a question. So I'm just admiring your whole presentation. As you related it, I'm getting tired myself, because you must be exhausted to try to do everything you just told us you were doing, and your husband has this other business going. So I'm sure the bulk of the load kind of falls on your shoulders. And I'm heartened to know that there are at least avenues for you, to go to try to get help, whether that's funding help or advice or just informational kind of situation. So it's good to know that those are out there for you. And don't feel badly that you haven't found every last little resource you might have, because I've been on this committee for 6 years and I still have no idea. In many cases, someone will mention something, I'll say, geez, that's the first time I ever heard about it. So I just want to say, way to go. And yeah, as Chris said, the diversified section of our ag is incredibly important as we begin to kind of move away from what was, all dairy at one point. So here's my question. Because you are, in essence, doing all the work, are you hopeful that you'll reach a point? Because you did make a point about, you're just sort of starting out and you're systemically trying to put things in place. Are you eventually hoping that you'll be able to hire some help and that you won't have to do the whole thing yourself? Or are you really intent on staying as the same size, I guess?
That's a great question. We've been doing quite a bit of looking within and farm planning and business planning. Right now, we're taking it 1 year at a time. Our kids are 4 and 1. So, this year I hired some childcare 3 days a week, and I hired one farm employee 1 day a week. And that's a big move for me because up until now, I've done both entirely myself. So yes, we intend to outsource some of the work. But my husband's construction business, he stopped hiring folks in 2020 when the pandemic hit, and it was so hard to find anyone and follow all of those precautions, and found that just staying small and lean actually increased his profitability. And we're figuring all of that out. And each year it's kind of a juggle to figure out how much time and resources we can put into this business and that business and our family and how we're going to make it all work. So yes, hopefully, I would love to have employees, attract and retain great employees over time. But for right now, I don't intend to grow so quickly that I need them until my kids are hopping on a school bus, but we'll see. I'm not sure. It's a good question. It's okay. Almost like, as we talk, I'm thinking like just navigating all of these programs could be a full-time job, or doing just the marketing for my farm could be a full-time job. And I'm doing all of that plus plumbing, and there's the actual production of food and, It's a lot. So yeah, we try to outsource what we can, and we're getting better at that over time, but all of that takes quite a leap of faith that it's going to pay off.
You're making me feel tired again, Hannah. And please, Senator Pearson said, stay in touch with us. If there's things that you can say, hey, you know, those 5 people in that committee, maybe they have an answer for you, kind of thing.
Anthony?
Excuse me, I'm just wondering, with all your diversification, what's the one, is there one piece of your farm, one part of your operation that you think has the most potential for growth?
Yes, I think our grass-fed meat has the most potential for growth, because we have so much grass. We have, 80 acres of good forage, and we just came from a place that had 4 acres of scrubby forage. So when at our prior location, we were more focused on pork and chicken, pretty grain intensive meats, and we are shifting now into more rotational grazing and grass-fed meats. And I think the demand is there. We see it all the time. We're selling out of meat like crazy. But
Okay.
yeah.
I was asking if you had any issues with slaughtering and access to slaughterhouse and meat.
Yes.
Processing.
Yes, absolutely. And I could go on about that for another half hour, but I want to give other people some time too. But yes, we definitely feel the bottlenecks of the slaughterhouse processing industry very much. So this year, we away from selling half and whole pork shares to only selling retail cuts. We've shifted our business model quite a bit because of it.
So do you do on-farm slaughter or custom slaughter or itinerant slaughter, or how do you do that? And
we process all of our chickens ourselves on farm, and just recently we've run into some insurance snafus, but we have now I've written a lengthy SOP so that we could be covered by our insurance to process our own poultry on farm. And we follow all of the ag regulations. And so yes, poultry on farm, but we bring our pork to a slaughterhouse, a USDA inspected slaughterhouse, so that we can sell retail cuts.
yeah, we've had a lot of discussion earlier this year in regards to on-farm. There is a law and a rule on-farm slaughter. And we didn't know how, if you sold like a pig to 2 people, and you just take it to the slaughterhouse and have it cut in half and each person gets a half, or do you sell just small pieces?
We used to do the former, what you're just saying, and this year we're shifting away from that model. Last year, so I set my price in the winter for the coming year, and I used to sell whole hog shares and half shares. And what happened last year is I set the price in the winter, and then grain prices went up so much and slaughterhouse prices went up so much. And then 2 days before we brought the pigs to slaughter, the processing facility said, oh, by the way, we can't smoke anything this year and we can't make sausage, which is of course what everyone wants when they're buying a pig. So we can't take that risk anymore. So now we are only selling retail cuts so that we can control the price at the point of sale, and we don't get burned by forces outside of our farm business.
Other questions?
Well, you talked a lot about the different stresses that you're under, which is totally understandable. And I want to just mention that part of what you pointed out before was that we do give a lot of attention to dairy, as we've all mentioned. And part of the dilemma with that is we're giving a lot to dairy because dairy has a lot of problems, pollution problems, water quality problems, manure problems. And we find ourselves stuck in a position where we're basically propping up an industry that is too big to fail in some cases, given the situation of our economy, as opposed to small diversified operations like yours, which don't get the attention they deserve because they, you don't rise up to the limits, as you mentioned. But I'm wondering which of the parts of your farming operation keep you awake the most at night?
That's a good question. We're so early in setting up infrastructure here that the setting up of systems keeps me awake at night. And that's not maybe answering your question exactly, because I think you're asking me which enterprise keeps me up at night.
No,
I'd say
that's a legitimate answer.
yeah, just like the fact that we have to renovate this dairy barn and learn how to pour concrete over an existing slab, and then figure out how to install frost-free hydrants, and trench that line out to the garden and put up a greenhouse this year. And all these things we are doing ourselves, and we don't necessarily know how. We're just learning as we go, while also running the business. So we're in the thick of it. All of it keeps me up.
Right.
Well, anything else, Chris? Any other questions? And Hannah, you're more than welcome to stay on. We're gonna call on Patrick. No, Chuck, I guess, is up next, or Patrick. Chris?
Yeah, I feel like this is a nosy question, Hannah, but I'm always interested in how small operations, and you started on another plot of land, how you are able to secure land. And the reason I ask is because I worry that as we see particularly small and mid-sized dairy go out of business, too often they get gobbled up by the bigger dairy down the road. And in my opinion, we need to interrupt that cycle and shift so that more producers like you are able to access land. Is this conserved land? Did you work through the land trust? I don't want to be prying into your finances, but what can you tell us in terms of lessons that might help us help the next farmer in your situation?
No, that's fine. I'm an open book. This is conserved land. It was conserved through the Vermont Land Trust. And the quick story of the farm is that it was farmed conventionally as a dairy by one man for his entire life. He died at 98, and his children did not want the farm. They wanted this land to turn into a housing development. And so kind of on his deathbed, he signed away the rights. He signed it over and said that it must be conserved because he wanted it to stay in the working landscape. So his children are not super happy with us, but the land went into a family trust, and some of the family members reached out to the land trust to identify a farmer that would be a good fit with this land and location. So we were contacted by the land trust because we were in touch with them already looking for a farm that would be appropriate for us. And we saved up a lot of money and, bought this land for an affordable price, considering how much land we have and the huge value of it. But we bought it at agricultural value as conserved farmland.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
180 acres of farmland is, that's pretty good. You should be able to grow and grow some more.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be able to outgrow this place, and I hope to leave it to my sons.
Well, if there are no other questions, we'll move to Patrick. And you're welcome to stay on, Hannah, if you want to listen. Go. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I run and own a farm with my wife about 10 minutes from Montpelier. We're right up Route 12. We grow mixed vegetables, and we provide vegetables weekly for 8 months of the year to 150 families in Montpelier. Yesterday was our first delivery day, so we go around delivering to homes of a lot of elderly people, a lot of people that are too busy to come to the farm. And then the other half of our CSA people come right to our farm and pick up. And that's what's happening today, the first one of the year. So we're able to do that 8 months of the year right now. We also bought an old dairy farm. It's originally we bought 19 acres and we've just added to it. So we have about 35 acres right on Wrightsville Reservoir. And 3 or 4 years ago, when we purchased this farm, the house was falling down. The barn was in really bad. Structurally, the barn was okay, but it had been abandoned when the bulk milk tank law came into effect, and it was a small dairy, so it was no longer viable. So it had 20 or 30 years of decay. And we applied for a produce safety grant in 2019 and received $10,000. We got an additional $12,000 from NOFA as the farm of the month. And then we've put about that much money into transitioning that barn into a place where we wash and pack all of our produce. That $10,000, I mean, we've also been able to get $500 grants here or maybe $1,000 there, but 10,000 is a sizable chunk for us to really make an impact and a difference. We couldn't have done that by ourselves. We were able to insulate part of the barn and bring electricity there, water there. So our next jump will be to serve the community year round. With another grant like that in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, we could really build the facilities we need to do that. So I think with $10,000, that made a huge impact for our farm. We're able to employ 6 people for 8 months of the year, 6 local people. We're able to do a couple $100,000 of business and provide a service to our community that is not being provided by their farms, which is a home delivery of fresh, harvested that day, very healthy produce. And that's my sentiment would be that to really achieve the state's goals of, I think it's 25% local food being consumed here coming up, we really need to support vegetable farms as well, because it's an integral part of a healthy diet. And we're operating at a small to medium scale, and we're able to feed families and provide to restaurants as well in the area.
Do you sell to any of the schools, Patrick?
We don't, no.
Because we do have a program where local producers can sell directly to school food systems. I'm not sure if you deal directly with the kitchen, the guy that runs the woman that runs the kitchen, or if you deal through the superintendent's office, but we really encourage hot lunch programs to buy local foods and help subsidize that to a certain point to get fresh and wholesome Vermont grown produce into our schools. So maybe that's an area you could check out.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. It's another really important, to meet the state's goals, it's a really important area, because I think the national lunch standard is that a cheese pizza meets the vegetable requirement. So to really get, the freshness of what we're producing and get that into school, get kids eating that, is just critically important for a local food future. We have sold to Harwood High School a little bit, but that was kind of through someone we knew reached out to us. So we haven't had too much luck selling to other schools yet. And we also really concentrate on growing what we know we can sell. So we built customers like Red Hen and Woodbelly and Farmers to You in Middlesex that we can really plan on, a couple wedding caterers that we really know because of our scale, we're only growing 2.5 acres of vegetables very intensively. So because of our scale, we really want to know we can sell it before we plant it.
Yeah, yeah, Anthony?
You talk about wanting to know you're gonna sell it before you grow it. Well, I'm just wondering, what's the biggest demand you're seeing? What are some of the vegetables that there seems to be a growing market for?
That's a great question. There are a lot of great farms in our area, and I think the area where we could grow the most is providing produce in the winter. Our same customer base that we built up, if we can provide to them year round, that is the best way to build our particular business. So that would take, maybe we've built up a lot of greenhouse space, but being able to effectively heat some of that greenhouse space to grow greens in the winter. And there's such a demand for fresh vegetables when all the vegetables in the winter here are coming from California that you would find in the supermarkets. So our biggest opportunity is fresh greens in the winter. And if we have the greens, then we find we can sell the other roots that we can produce and store as well. But if we don't have the greens, then it's harder for us to sell the other things.
You have converted your barn to some degree. Do you have, is there any possibilities of indoor grow in that, or like fast freeze, or do people really require and want fresh veggies?
Well, we produced so many excess greenhouse crops last year that we did just freeze raw cut peppers and tomato sauce that is uncooked. And this actually today will be the first trial of putting that out for our spring CSA. So things that we processed last fall. But definitely if we could figure out how to build, it's in our plan to build a farm kitchen. And if we could have some funding to help do that, that's another way that we could get more local food to our customers and build our customer base even more. Because there's definitely a demand for all the things that we can't keep fresh all winter, but if we can freeze it, there's a demand for it.
Other questions? Anthony?
What role has the ag department played in supporting you as a startup? And I'm just wondering, I mean, we know some of the issues around meat production and slaughtering and whatnot, and the problems that people run into there. I'm wondering whether or not you have a relationship with the ag department, whether they come out and not test your products, but trying to get a word, but
we've never had the ag department out here. To my understanding, there's a threshold that we're not quite at where they would come and potentially test our wash water and see our wash station. Last time I checked, I think it was if you're doing over $500,000 of sales. Where the ag department has really helped us was with the produce safety grant. I always check about working lands grants, value added grants, but the admin burden is pretty hard because it's just my wife and I doing all the marketing, all the CSA management, all the production management. So we don't have anyone to help us write grants. And the produce safety grant was through the state's portal, and it was relatively easy to have everything prepared and just plug it in when it opened up. But some of the other grants are more complicated. We also have applied for a cover crop grant, but the compensation we were going to get was for our scale, so such a minimal amount that I didn't even pursue it. I think we were awarded a grant if we continued to do some paperwork for that, but it wouldn't have covered the seeds that we needed to. We plant 2 to 3 acres of cover crop a year and spend in the realm of $1,000 of seed. Cover crop seed, and I think the grant was for a couple $100.
Have you ever dealt with VHCB, Vermont Housing Conservation Board?
We have.
Well, they they have what they call a READY program where grant writers are employed by VHCB that's supposed to help small grant applicants get through the application process.
Mhm.
So, there's a possibility there where if you were looking for a grant of a certain type, you could call their VHCB and ask for their READY program director and see if they might be able to help you with a grant writing proposal.
Wonderful. Yeah, I didn't mention that we did go through the VHCB Farm Viability Program. That is, run in coordination with NOFA, and that really provided help, with our long-term planning, our business planning. Through that, we were able to access some education funds and have some older farmers mentor us. Farmers with more experience. That was a huge help. And then VHCB did also come out to our house and do a bunch of lead testing. Our house was built, so we live where the Conservation Corps lived when they built the Wrightsville Dam. We're on the property that housed a couple thousand people, to our knowledge, and our house was where some of the officers lived, and it was just riddled with lead paint and lead dust. And VHCB sent someone out to do thousands of dollars of testing, which we never could have done on our own. And that really was a huge help, and it informed us. And because we have two little daughters, a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. So at that time, my wife was pregnant. And because of the results that we got, we really decided to just completely gut the house, take everything out, and, make sure that our family was safe.
What about, do you have to pump any water from streams or anything for your gardens?
We do not at this point. We just run off of our house well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a vulnerability for us. And moving forward, it's something that we need to have a backup, because we're at the end of a Washington Co-op electric line, and we're often the last. There's only 4 houses past us on the line, so our power has been out multiple times for multiple days. So that's one vulnerability for our farm, is being able to function in a power outage. If we had, our greenhouse crops really need water, our wash and pack operation needs water, and all of our seedlings that we grow to plant out. So go ahead.
What utility are you associated with?
Washington Electric Co-op.
And they don't do battery packs, or, a lot of people, including myself, years back, didn't have battery packs, so we put propane driven generators in for backup to poor utility lines. But now they have these battery packs that the utilities are pushing. Have you looked into having one of those installed at your farm to supply you with electricity if the line goes out?
We have not yet. We just have a small generator. We can, as a kind of a lifeline, we can take from place to place, but nothing to run our water pump. Because of the cost, we've just put so much of any of our profits into building the farm to where it is, that's really in the next phase, making sure that all of our backup systems are in place. When we purchased the farm, we looked at doing solar panels, but the cost was just so prohibitive. And we're in a situation where we just don't want to take on any more debt too. So we haven't, I'm very interested in a battery pack system, or a backup battery, rather than installing a propane generator.
Yeah. Well, of course, these are relatively new, and we haven't looked into, as a committee, ways of helping, helping to get these small agricultural production facilities, maybe grants for, to help put in something like this, but it sounds like it's something that we should put on our to-do list and to look at to see if there's some way that we could do some cost sharing somehow to, because if you can't get water on your farm and your plants are out there choking, it's pretty disastrous.
I will mention that it hasn't been the foremost concern for us yet because we have decided to really build our soils. The resiliency we look at is in our soils as much as any kind of technological solution we have. So we've built our soils from 4 to 5% organic matter up to over 10% organic matter. And every percentage organic matter that you improve in the soil sequesters an incredible amount of carbon and also holds, off the top of my head, I think it's 40,000 gallons of extra water that is held in the soil for every 1% per acre of organic matter. So in the last couple really dry years, we really just water when we are transplanting or to get seeds to germinate, and then we don't have to water again. Our soil stays so moist because of all of the compost, all of the cover cropping, and our farming practices. So I think that's a benefit to, the science about soil is growing and changing so much, and we know so much more now. And so we really look at the resiliency of our farm is how we take care of our principal resource, which is our soil.
Yeah, that's for sure. Other questions for Patrick?
Also.
Yeah. Chris?
Well, just a word of thanks, Patrick. We've been funding I can't remember the name, but I think we call it the Ecosystem Payment Group Services. I can't remember, but the concept is promote soil development and restoration and find a way to remunerate farmers. And it's always heartening to hear people that are doing it. I think a lot of farmers are doing it just for the intrinsic value, for the straight return on investment that you're getting. And I just want to say, as one voice here, thank you for doing that. I think it's not really a question. It's clearly vitally important for a state in any number of ways, but especially that is seeing increased intense rain events to protect our downtowns. Montpelier has a history of flooding trauma. So I just want to say thank you and keep up the good work. It's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, there are no other questions. Do we have Chuck on the line?
Yes.
We'll move on to Chuck. Or can you hear us, Chuck? Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I need to run, but thank you, Senator Pearson, and thank you, everyone. We're really grateful to be able to operate in our community and serve our community. So thanks for all your work too.
Great. This is Chuck Worcester. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks
Good
very
morning,
much.
Chuck. And have you been on the line so you've heard what we're doing and things?
Yes, I have. I heard the testimony from Hannah and from Patrick.
Yeah, very, very good. And that was good testimony that we received. Well, welcome to the committee, and glad you could hang on and make it.
Well, thanks so much. And thank you to the whole committee. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate your interest. And it was fun to hear Hannah and Patrick, because our farm started at their scale, maybe even a little bit smaller than their scale. and we have grown quite a bit. We're now in our 23rd year. My farm name is Sunrise Farm. We're just south of the VA hospital in White River, so town of Hartford, Windsor County. And our sales this year, we're up around $500,000 of sales. So that, by Vermont standards, I think puts us kind of in the middle on the vegetable side of things. So I might have a slightly different perspective than the other two, which I think hopefully will add to what they've said. I'll give you just a quick thumbnail of our business, which will, I think, set up what I really want to speak about. But as I said, this is our 23rd year, about $500,000 in sales. I have 3 employees who work year round. And at the full season, there'll be 10 of us, June, July. 2/3 of our business is certified organic vegetables. We're certified through VOF, NOFA. And all those vegetables go into a 400 family CSA. That's all on farm. We're quite close to White River. Also, we're very close to Lebanon and Hanover, New Hampshire. So we've got about 40,000 people kind of in our immediate neighborhood. And we're lucky enough that people are willing to come to our farm every week. They can choose what they take home once they get there, and we have pick your own flowers and herbs and things like that. So as I said, about 2/3 of our business is these organic vegetables. The other third is a variety of things. We raise chickens on pasture for meat. We raise chickens on pasture for eggs, lamb on pasture for meat. We do a bunch of sugaring, at least at a small scale, to keep us busy in March. And we also have a farm stand where we sell other farms' products, mostly from our neighborhood, but kind of if we can get a good cheese or something from Jasper Hill or another producer in Vermont, we'll definitely bring that into our stand for our people. Over the years, I've been a very grateful recipient of several grants that you folks have helped set up. One was a produce safety grant that we received a few years ago for about $3,500 to repair a well casing on the well that we use for washing our vegetables. So that was an excellent upgrade. We also received a Working Lands grant of $20,000 a couple years ago to build a on-farm compost facility. And we now take in food scraps both from our CSA members and also from the community at large. And we turn that into compost that we can use on our farm. So that's been an absolutely wonderful project that was made possible in large part by the Working Lands program. So my applause for that program and your work in helping to fund that every year. In a larger perspective, I'll tell you a little bit about our land. So we started on a abandoned dairy farm, sort of keeping that theme going here this morning. The land base had been reduced to 20 acres and it was not an active farm. So my wife and I were able to purchase it just with a normal home mortgage as a place to live. So we didn't have to go through any agricultural funding sources for that. After 15 years, the business had become large enough that site was too small. So we purchased a second farm site, which is right on Route 5 and it's quite a prominent spot in our town. And we were able to get an excellent loan from Yankee Farm Credit to make that purchase and to expand our operation. So we have 2 sites. We have about 40 acres of cleared land. And of that 40, only 6 is flat enough for vegetable production. So I think as Chris mentioned, we have more intense rain these days. And the land that we can grow row crops on, it needs to be really flat or close to it because of the risk of soil erosion. So out of all this wonderful land that we own, only 6 acres is good enough to grow vegetables on. So we've got about 30 acres of grass and we've done a variety of things. We graze all of it. We have at various times attempted to make our own hay, although we've discovered that our scale is just too small to afford that level of capitalization for the hay equipment. So now we buy hay from our neighbors, which is also good. So your question today about diversified farms, I think is a great one. And I'll give you an example here. So we've been raising sheep now for over 20 years. And unfortunately, we've lost money on sheep for 18 of them. I think we've now moved into the black, but we were in the red for a long time. And so sheep is a great example. So these days, if we need to sell a lamb for somewhere north of $400 in order for us to make any money doing it. And if we can hold on to $50 at the end of that 400, then I'll feel like we're doing a good job. So you can see that, you know, $50 a lamb, it's tough to make that into a freestanding business. And in fact, for many years, we've taken advantage of the on-farm slaughter law, although of late we haven't, and I'd be happy to talk more about that if that's of interest. But right now we're selling about 80 lambs a year. If we can make $50 a lamb, that's $4,000. So that's great. It's, you know, we're in the black. It's net positive, but $4,000 doesn't support, you know, me, let alone employees or anything else. So it brings me sort of into the structure of our business, which is to say we almost have a bunch of businesses, none of which could stand alone. You know, the chickens, the eggs are similar. The margins are thin. They're all profitable, but not enough. There's not a large enough scale to turn it into a business. So our solution, of course, is to bundle a number of these things together and turn it into a business. So as I mentioned, you know, mostly vegetables, but also the chicken, eggs, lamb, and syrup, it all comes together into a business that's viable. But in order for that to work, each of the individual pieces has to work. And this is where I want to talk a little bit about the meat side of it in particular. And that's because meat, well, I'll step back I'll take one step back. So vegetable production is kind of the same, no matter how you do it. If you do it in California, you're doing it with machines. If you're doing it in Vermont, you're doing it maybe with some tractors, some by hand. But the general process is the same. You put the seeds or the plants out there, you stick them in a row, you weed them, you water them, you feed them, then you go back and you harvest them. And so it's kind of the same thing at whatever scale you're talking about. Meat, however, is totally different. In the industrial model, the animals stay indoors, and the companies bring the food to them and they take the manure away. In the Vermont setting, most of the Vermont setting, the animals wander around outside. And so we, the farmers, have to go out and bring them food, water, move their fencing, things like that. So we're creating fundamentally a different product, but we're also doing it in a fundamentally different way, which leads to the problem of price. On the vegetable side, my organic veggies, you know, depending on time of year and other details, they might be comparable with conventional prices. They might be half again more. They might be twice as much, something like that. That's kind of the spread. But the meat that we're raising on pasture is 3 or 4 times what you sort of get. You can get ground beef for, you know, maybe a quarter of what you can get it for from us. So, and that's because fundamentally we're raising meat in a much different way. And I'm sure you are all familiar with the advantages of pasture-raised meat, the health benefits, the environmental benefits, the tourism benefits, the beauty benefits, the carbon sequestration benefits are all there. But it makes for a much, much different potential market. And I sort of think of it in my own brain as, honestly, there really isn't a competitive market for meat because the price spread is so huge. We're lucky that we have customers who value this product, who purchase this product, but it's not something that most Vermonters, you know, can afford, honestly. So that puts us into a tough spot. And the way sort of the marketplace of meat is set up nationally and internationally, that's not likely to change anytime soon. And so my testimony today, I really wanted to try and zero in on this question with you folks and put it in front of you, because as you look around Vermont, especially if you step outside of the Champlain Valley, there's a lot of land that's not flat enough for vegetables. So despite the great success of the vegetable sector in the last 2-3 decades, we're never going to be able to use that dairy land, that land that's coming out of dairy farms, because we can't grow vegetables on the steep hillsides like that. So if we're going to keep all that land somehow in agriculture, it's got to have some animals on it in some way. It's just, we can't do it with veg. So we got to get some animals out there. And as I said, it's incredibly challenging to try and, you know, create a business on the basis of meat production in Vermont. So I don't have any magic solutions to this, of course, and I'm sure you guys don't either, but I thought it might be worth a quick conversation about, like, how could we do that? Because it would certainly benefit our business because we do raise animals on pasture, and because we do need a way to use our 30 acres of non-vegetable land in some way that adds to the bottom line. But I think it's very emblematic of the whole state, especially the eastern 2/3, that this is the kind of land base that we have. So, a couple of things. One was mentioned a few minutes ago, the payment for ecosystem services model. I've been following that only sort of peripherally, and it's super complicated on who gets paid for what and where the money comes from. But that idea is so important and so central to what we're trying to do in Vermont here. The ecological damage from industrial meat is enormous. The ecological benefit of meat, pastured meat in Vermont is enormous. But there needs to be some way economically that we can capture that benefit. So the ecosystem services group that you guys have been funding is doing great work on that. I have no idea what the final outcome will be, and I hope that it's actionable, but I would certainly point all of us in that direction. There's also work I think that could be done at the state level in trying to promote the idea of grass-fed, pasture-raised meat. And for that quick list I ran through half jokingly, which is the health benefits, the beauty benefits, the tourism benefits, the local economy benefits are all there. And if we could really focus on that kind of Vermont brand, that we are creating the meat that people want and need. You've, I'm sure, read many articles and sort of in the media that talk about how meat is terrible for the climate and terrible for you. And all those articles make the same mistake, which is they're all talking about the industrial meat that's locked up inside. And so there's great work for us to do as individual farmers, and I think as a state, to really say, hey, we can do this. We've got this land base. We grow some of the best grass in the world here in Vermont, and animals are the way for us to take advantage of that. And then the final thing I want to touch on too, which is the slaughter side of it, which I know you all have done great work on. You've taken advantage of the on-farm slaughter law for a bunch of years. It solves a number of problems, mainly the problem of transportation, of having to have a vehicle and a trailer to move animals around. It also gets you out of the bottleneck of scheduling, which I know you guys are also aware of. And I think from the humane standpoint, it's nice for the animals to never have to leave their home base. So I'm in favor of it. There's one aspect of it that has always kind of stuck in my craw, which is we have to have an itinerant slaughterer do it. I understand that might be language that's coming from the USDA, and I can see in the abstract why you sort of want a third party there. But as a practical matter, I'm selling meat directly to the people that I'm putting it into their hands. And it would be much more beneficial for my farm if we could actually do the slaughter and all that ourselves. Because as I said, we're trying to fit these little businesses together. So I'm looking for work for my people to do. So having to then hire someone else to come in, in some ways I might as well hire the slaughterhouse to do it as long as I can get the date. And then the other piece of on-farm slaughter, it's a great program, and by design, and probably importantly, it's very small. It's for small producers. It's already it's not big enough for us, even at our medium scale, which is fine. But I think that as a committee and as a state, we need to figure out ways to make that slaughter more affordable. I understand why the agency is really focused on facilities, because the USDA is really focused on facilities, and they don't want exemptions and they don't want alternatives. And I totally understand the reasoning for that. But it creates an almost insurmountable obstacle for someone to move, to become a larger producer. As I said, if I can sell a lamb for $400, I'm happy, but 125 of that is going to go to the slaughterhouse. Another 25 to 50 of it's just going to go for me moving the animals back and forth. So maybe 40% of my expense is being incurred at the last minute there, and so you can see it's a really, really tight margin. And so I don't know quite how the state can help if indeed we're going to go the facilities approach. And I think, based on what the agency has said, we are. Are there ways that we can make that more affordable for kind of small to medium producers? Are there transportation services that the state could set up or subsidize? Is there some payment that the state could be making to slaughterhouses to keep slots available for small producers or to subsidize the small producer in some way? I don't quite know. I'm just throwing these ideas out randomly. But I think the important thing to focus on is the slaughter thing continues to be a huge bottleneck. And the on-farm piece is great as far as it goes, but that by itself is not going to be enough for us to figure out how are we going to use this incredible grass that we have in Vermont as we continue to see this transition away from dairy. So I think that's the list of what I had pre-prepared. I'm happy to answer questions, and I hope I didn't move in any random directions here.
No, we appreciate the well-rounded issues that you brought before us. And I guess to start where you left off, we've spent quite a lot of time, even this year, on the issue of on-farm slaughter. And you don't have, the owner of the animal doesn't have to have an itinerant slaughterer, but the farmer, the way the federal law was handed down, what they would allow is the owner of the animal to perform the slaughter, or they could hire an itinerant slaughterer to slaughter the animal. But the farmer, it's very clear that the farmer in no way can take part in the slaughter of the animal. And it's kind of a crazy thing, you know, and I don't know of any way around this, because you're the farmer and the owner is somebody from, say, Hanover or White River, and they certainly don't know how to slaughter an animal and do it in a, you know, you want this done in a humane and safe way. The only, and I don't even know how to get around that, other than early on you said you and your wife, I think, own the farm. Is that right?
Yes, we co-own it. As a practical matter, I'm the farmer and she has some off-farm income, but yes, we do co-own it.
Yeah, so your wife couldn't be the owner of the animals and sell the animal to the people, and then you could do the slaughter. I don't know, you know, that there may be a creative way around this, but we haven't come up with one at this point.
Yeah, I appreciate your looking into it, and it's interesting that it's sort of just that one little line in the statute, but for us, it makes all the difference. You know, I need to have someone there because we need to, you know, we compost all of the, you know, all of the parts that aren't going to get turned into meat. So, you know, we need someone there to assist, but, you know, most of the time you're just kind of standing there.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, we do some slaughter for our own purposes, and you know, we certainly could do it. But so I understand that may be outside of your control, but I would just again flag that as an unfortunate piece of this.
Yeah, we have sent one or two letters off to our congressional delegation and one directly to USDA, trying to get clarification to make this, you know, more convenient and better. But it's certainly a rough nut to crack because they have these, you know, very stringent rules and regulations. And so anyways, we're still beating away at this, but to take a sheep and a lamb and raise it and then get it to value it big enough so it values out at $400 and only end up with 50 is not a very big profit when it takes, all year to do this.
Yeah, and I think that's, it's tough in the marketplace too, that, people say, holy smokes, like, look at these guys, they're making bank, $400 for a sheep, good work if you can get it. And then I'm sitting on my side saying, I sell to you for $350, but then I'd make zero.
Yeah. The itinerant slaughterers charge $125.
No, they, it's more like $50, $60, something like that. But then we need to take the carcasses to a facility that can cut and wrap them.
Yeah.
So, a possibility for us would be that we could build our own, cut and wrap, basically our own butcher shop. And then we could do that second part of it. And I've thought a bit about that. And, as with any piece of equipment that you build or buy, you need to use it a certain amount, in order to pay for itself. And so it gets you into that scale problem of, are we going to raise 200 lambs, in order to justify a building like that? So we're sort of in this, we're kind of in an in-between spot that we're big enough that we've got, we have a real business going, but we're not so big that we can afford our own, dedicated slaughter or butcher facilities.
Cut and wrap. Chris?
Chuck, thanks for your time today. And then I suppose if you did that facility and invited others in to use it, you'd be in a whole nother universe of regulation, right?
That's correct. Yeah, especially on the wastewater side. And this is really where the building gets expensive. You have to really have a USDA certified facility. You're essentially building a house, a small house. You need obviously clean water coming in. You need some kind of septic or town, sewer on the other side, and and wiring and lighting and everything to code. So it's kind of like building a small house. And so you can see the amount of money that either would be needed to subsidize that, or the amount of business that the farm needs to afford that is, it's considerable.
Yeah. We run into these federal problems that just drive us all crazy. But anyway, I'm glad you're finding ways to piece it all together.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I think this, the focus, I hate to move the focus over to subsidies, because I think, like all of us, the idea here is to compete in a marketplace. But as I pointed out, I think the marketplace on the meat side is so distorted that it's sort of not possible. And so I think your work exploring things like payment for ecosystem services, or maybe, is there a way for there to be, I don't know, like the transportation is a big bottleneck. Maybe there's ways that, slaughterhouses can be encouraged to keep spots open, with some sort of a subsidy. And, I hate to go down that road, but if we can't change the regs, if it really does mean we all have to go through a slaughterhouse, then we're going to have to figure out an economical way for us to go through the slaughterhouse.
Yeah. I like the idea that your customers that come to the farm, I think you said they bring their scraps and it goes into your compost pile. That's a really good way to get off-farm nutrients back to the farm, right through the compost system, and put back on your soils. That's a very good plan you've got there.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's been very successful. Of course, it's a wonderful educational piece, right? People can pick up their vegetables one week and bring back the scraps the next. And as you said, we're capturing this great, essentially free nutrient source, getting it back on the soil. And a lot of that is thanks to the universal recycling and waste law that the legislature and the governor put through. So it's been a really, really great thing. We've just started, applying the compost last fall, so it's a little early to see great gains in the soil organic matter, but we're going to see them. And so it's just a perfect program. And again, thanks to the state both for helping to fund it, but also to putting the right regulations in place to make it possible.
Yeah. Other questions? If we got that meat thing straightened out, how much could you, or how many more could you handle, say, in your operation and get rid of if we could get something like that, more streamlined?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, as Hannah said, the demand for local meat is big. People really do want it, and the problem is the price point. So I have no question that I could sell probably 2, 3, 4 times more lamb. That there's a market for it, but again, it's at what price? That we can make that possible. But I think in theory, there's an enormous market. It's just that we can't meet it at the right price at the moment.
And to do that, of course, it's the slaughter, the cut and wrap, and in that part of it that makes it sort of unaffordable, or is it the growing in general that makes it unaffordable?
Yeah, it's a great question and observation. I think there's 2 sides of it. One is kind of in the national scale, right? It's artificially cheap to raise enormous amounts of grain and pump it through animals in feedlots. So if we had a real approach to carbon and climate and things on a national level, you would see the price of conventional meat shoot up rapidly, which would indirectly help us because it would get us closer to the vegetable thing where, it's going to be more expensive to raise stuff outside, but it's not going to be 4 times more. It might only be twice as much. So that would certainly help. And then on our expense side, of course, we have to try to be as efficient as we can. But the slaughter, all of the logistics of slaughter are a huge issue. As I said, that can be like 30 to 40% of your expense can happen right there at the end. And maybe I know there are grant programs, and as I said, I haven't quite committed to what kind of a scale that we would be on in terms of how if we're going to build a room, I want to make sure that we're going to use it. I don't want it to be just something that we twice a year go in there and slaughter a few animals. So, well, one thing I would say, Hannah mentioned chickens as well. So chickens, the USDA gives us some great flexibility under 20,000. And I think the legislature and the agency have done a good job of setting thresholds at 1,000 and 5,000. And as you sort of get bigger, the regulatory burden gets heavier, which I think is appropriate because you start to achieve some efficiencies and you have a better sense of your business. But with chickens, you can really start. The first ones, there's very little regulation as you're learning about it. And so it's a great way to get started. Vegetables is the same thing, even with the Food Safety and Modernization Act. That doesn't really kick in until $500,000 in total revenue. So again, you have a chance to start at a smaller scale and kind of ease your way in, which is sort of a great kind of Vermont way of doing it. But if you're looking at red meat, it's like the full weight of the reg lands on you at animal number 1. So there's no chance to tiptoe in there. And especially when it comes to slaughter, that's a big impediment.
Any other questions for Chuck? If I guess there's no other questions, Chuck, and we want to, thank you a lot for your time and appreciate your work and your knowledge and sharing it with us. So stay in touch.
Thanks, Senator, and thanks to the committee for your interest in taking this testimony. I appreciated the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have Joe Kevitz. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Calling you from talking in now today from sunny Columbus, Ohio.
Oh,
In
long way
a,
from home.
yeah, it's one of those business meetings that you have to do with Farm Bureau every now and then. And, you know, just went through 3 days of really great meetings on a lot of different subjects. None of this on small farms though right now. A lot of diversity and pieces of helping us grow as individuals, which was really good.
Yeah.
So, as a so my name is Joe Tisbert. I am owner and operator of Valley Dream Farm in Cambridge, Vermont. I am also the state president of Vermont Farm Bureau. It gives me a unique perspective of how things, I think of how things are and where we have to stand as small farms, large farms, medium farms. We're all in this together. We need every one of us to create the markets. I think that a lot of the question here was about, you know, how do we help out the diverse farms? On our farm, we've grown a little hemp. We grow mixed vegetables. We ship mostly wholesale. We do agritourism for farm to table dinners. My daughter is coming back to the farm, has come back to the farm, and she created a cut flower garden as her portion of the business. We also rent some land to a young farm family. We rent 5 acres so they can increase their vegetable production, and which I think is very key for us farmers that are young but older, to help out some youngsters and keep a vibrant Vermont farms. I think it's very important that, you know, we keep the regulation for these farms as low as we can. They already have a lot of, you know, somebody just mentioned FSMA, and you know, FSMA, yeah, it doesn't kick in till you have a lot of produce, but if you have to find a market out of state, then it kicks in much earlier. So, you know, finding the regulations, grant funding that we can, you know, keep those guys in the ball game, I think is very important. As I was thinking about this testimony, I was thinking to myself, you know, there's so many bills going on now. Kind of like the surface water bill that's out there that, you know, we cannot as small farmers, we cannot compete in a world that we're going to have to pay for equipment because we irrigate on such a small level of taking of 5,000 gallons out of a river is nothing, and it doesn't take very much water to get that out of sight. But what we would like to see is, you know, I mean, I've talked with every state in New England on what their regulations are and how they're affected. And most of them, a lot of them have that rule that, you know, you register and how much water you take, you report it. Some report it yearly, some report it more, you know, monthly, but, you know, the thresholds are all over 50,000 gallons. So 50,000 to 100,000 gallons is the threshold. And as a small farm and having to buy equipment that would meter water intake out of the rivers, and then having to record it, you know, where's it going? Who's taking the information? Is it a yearly thing that we're going to have to do? I think that's a very important piece that we have to think about when we're talking about small farms. How much regulation, how much burden are we putting on them? So there's lots of issues out there. You know, fuel prices right now are through the roof. I just filled my oil tank for my greenhouse. We do some bedding plants in the spring. Here we have flowers and bedding plants. We work really hard at trying to diversify our operation from early spring, late spring, summer, fall, winter, and how we how we make things work. Well, I'm going to tell you at $4.99 a gallon for fuel has just taken something that we probably spend about $1,100 a year, and that one fill up ended up over $2,000 for that fill up. Small farms cannot afford and will not be in business very long if they have to keep this fuel cost up. So this is a place that I don't know where we can help on this, but it's one thing that's really, really going to affect a lot of smaller and younger diverse farmers, because they just to keep up, there's not enough margins in their products in order to make it all flow. So lots of other things, agritourism, to me, it's kind of the glue that keeps our farm together. It's like an insurance policy that helps us get through the summer when you don't ship, when you're shipping like we're shipping mostly wholesale with some local sales in our farm stand, but the majority of our product will get shipped out to Deep Root Organic and get shipped all over the East Coast. Well, excuse me, all over the East Coast. So I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But go ahead. Sorry.
Schools, Joe?
Do I ship to schools?
Yes.
No.
Any schools?
No, we used to ship to local wholesale in Burlington, City Market, Healthy Living, Food Hub, and Deep Root. And we used to do a CSA, and we've had to shift our business because one is I took on Farm Bureau, and that takes some of my time away, and traveling every day to Burlington or every other day to Burlington is not conducive for really getting any work done around the farm. But and we have sales at hospitals. We used to do a CSA in Northwest Regional Health Center, which was, was borderline whether it had any success in it at all. So that's why we've chose to go mostly wholesale at this point, for family and life itself. We needed to slow the pace of running 150 miles to deliver product to get all your margins up. So one of the things that's been out there that some of the grants, like Working Lands, has done a really good job of helping folks get grants. The Department of Ag has helped folks get grants. I think stabilizing a grant process so that everybody has the availability of participating, and you don't really need to be a big grant writer to get it. So I'd like to see that the base of Working Lands be high enough that folks who have an idea and have a business plan and can really show, just need the little boost to help get this up and running, I think will be really key for the future, not for our future as a state in small agriculture, but also viability of smaller farms, I think is real important. The agritourism piece, I know you guys are going to be looking at, or you have looked at, accessory on-farm business. Processing, no matter what it is, processing on the farm would be a very key role to help farms be more viable, and regulation around processing would be an important piece not to overinflate. I mean, it's already expensive enough to try to get a processor in, and we've looked at a processor to try to bring in for hemp, and I mean, the cost was ridiculous. It wasn't going to be feasible for us to do. But, so other folks may have, may have a need to do that, and having funds available to help them get through that process and make it grow it would be really key. But the agritourism piece, the accessory on-farm business, I don't want to see a bill unintentionally hurt what we already have and what we already worked hard for with you guys to have an agritourism to make it even keel across the state. I'd hate to see it watered down or not enforced as we already have it. I think we had a bill that was pretty strong. I'm not sure where it would even take advantage. It seems like through the Department of Ag, if someone wanted to do cheese, they already have a process in place that they can do it without too much regulation in the way. Act 250.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes,
Joe, thanks for joining us, and always good to see you. You fit in such an interesting way in the ag puzzle in Vermont because of your own farm experience, and of course, having being a critical voice for all farmers and our sort of history of particularly dairy, but then your own experience is so different. So I'm always intrigued by your comments. Listening to all the farmers today and you, I'm struck by the enormous amount of hurdles that go from, hey, what do you think about growing, vegetables and small scale meat production? Could we do it? Then you got to find some land, and then you got to find markets and distribution, and the hurdles to set that business up are frankly staggering. But then you layer on top of that the various details of regulation. And I guess two questions. Do you hear from people that does them in, or that wards them away, and the regulation piece on top of all those other hurdles? And is there any entity that really helps as a one-stop shop? Like if somebody has land, they've got some knowledge or access to land, get the knowledge and the marketing down, is there someone to call and check in and say, here's what I want to do, X, Y, and Z? What are the rules? Do we have good systems in place to make that as easy as possible?
I'm not sure I have an expertise that there is places to call. There's extension, Heather Darby up in St. Albans does an amazing job of answering questions and trying to get it. I don't think there's one. I know you can call the Department of Ag and get some answers. And I know that at Farm Bureau, I don't know if we do a good enough job of saying, here's the one shop, and yes, you're doing things, this is great. One of the things that we try to push as Farm Bureau is mentoring, trying to help folks understand, we're going to tie you in with somebody that, can help you. And that's what we do. But, the tasks are, you have to try to be a good businessman, even though farming is about passion, right? It's if you don't have a passion for it, you're not going to do it. And, so I don't think I have a good answer for you, Senator Pearson, but I think that would be a helpful piece if there was that perfect liaison. And maybe they're out there. And I'm, a little older and a little more stubborn to ask for help. But, we just, I'm not sure I have the right answer for you.
Well, I like that about you. And there are different pieces of it, right? We have the business planning out of VHCB and technical support, but to the extent that this is squarely in the future for Vermont agriculture, it seems to me that's something we could look into. So I'll put that on our own list. But thank you. I appreciate your thinking.
So I was also thinking about working lands. I mean, I think that there's talk about raising the yearly minimum, and I think that that's a great idea to raise it so that, you know, the funds are there if the people have these progress. And I think from what I've learned is that, you know, they've never run out of money. They've always run out of money before they run out of things they could fund. And I know that through adjustments and everything, a lot of times things get funded, but having a yearly base that's, you know, can be counted on, also to relieve some of the restrictions on those funds. Like we've heard of farms this year that, have, you know, getting product is tight, getting help is tight, couldn't get a project done that was, even though it was ready to go, you know, their funds were going to run out at a certain time. And to be able to extend those funds, I think would be an important change to how the working lands all works. So extend it out over, you know, if you do get the funds, give you an adequate time, especially with conditions the way they are today, with supplies being tight, labor being tight, expense, you know, a project that was signed up in 20 or 21, now the cost of that project has more than doubled, just for supplies itself. So I think that, you know, we should be sensitive to that. And I think, you know, we would like to see that go further.
Yeah, we had Hannah Doyle on earlier today. I think that she and her farm's down towards Fairfax, I think, Fletcher from New Joe. But she said if there was a diagram set up so that if you were wanting to do veggies, vegetable growers, and if you needed advice, the line would go to a person that could help you, say, with fertilizer, could go with down further to an agronomist who could help you with soil types. And so if we had a little roadmap for different products, that it would be most helpful rather than getting on the phone, calling USDA, calling the extension, calling the ag agency, and hoping that the person that says hello can direct you in the right direction. So instead of spending a lot of time chasing phone numbers, there would be sort of a little system set up where whoever answers the phone would have that readily available, would be most helpful in like her case. I don't know if there is such a thing as that and we've missed it or not.
So I don't think there is such a thing. And, you know, that might be one of the things that, you know, somebody gets a grant for to set up so that it's out there for the state and the state can work on it. And I mean, the thing is, you got a lot of folks doing a lot of things right now, and you know, a lot of what their time, like extensions time, is earmarked to certain events, right? Because, you know, they got to get that soft money so they can do it. The water quality, the specialty crops has been doing a really good job. But I think that may be a great way to go and could be somebody's project that, and also putting people on, you know, connecting people to people, right? It's the Veg and Berry Growers does a good job of that. They have put pieces out there. You know, another thing that's hurting small farms is labor. I know nationally, I'm working really diligently to try to help this H2A program make adjustments that can help smaller farms that need help with labor, and housing is a problem. You know, there's some folks out there trying to help with that. But, you know, a lot of the smaller farms may need to put people in their own home, and the repair might need to be to their own home in order to house their workers. That's something that we do. But when you look at the grant for, you know, housing repairs or expansion to make it all done, and if it's your own home, you can't use it. I mean, that's really a drawback, especially to smaller farms. who may not have two houses on their farm and be able to set one up for housing for H-2A labor, immigrant labor. It's a big issue. It's a big issue. It's becoming bigger because one person can do a little bit of work and maybe make some money, but if they want to be successful, they may have to have a person or two to work with them so that they can do all the business pieces that need to be done and not just all the labor that needs to be done. So it's very important we look at the whole picture.
So Joe, that housing program that we set up last year, the year before, but it just got going this winter through Champlain Housing. You can't get any assistance if the farmer hand lives in the farmhouse itself. You can't get any assistance to
Correct.
fix their room.
That's one of the things that would kill your loan. I mean, because you can get $30,000 to help with, making, maybe you want to expand that place so they have an extra, so they have two, they each have their own room or something that's in your house. And, you may be living with the farmer full time and you may need space. And so that is definitely one of the pieces that says you don't qualify for the grant money.
I'll be damned. See, we try to do things perfect, but I guess we missed that one for sure. Well, we had, I guess, no one had brought that to our attention and never thought of it. So it's good to, I had no idea that wouldn't work. On the surface water bill, we're going to be taking that up, Joe, 466. And the way that's supposedly set up right now is you take it on 30-day intervals, and you can do 50,000 gallons a day through the 30 days. But if you go over the 50,000, then you get boosted into a different category. And if you, so I guess at the end of the year, you would have to make a report on if you went over your 50,000 gallons a day for 30 days. But if you had 4 days in there that you never, you didn't use any, you average out your gallonage for the month. And as long as you didn't go over the 50,000 a day, you wouldn't have to do much. Does that make any sense?
As a smaller farmer, that makes sense that the threshold is up. Did we put any, because you're talking about 50,000 a day. What do vegetables need? Vegetables need an inch of approximately, most vegetables will take an inch of rain a week in order to be successful. So if that's the case and you have, an inch of rain today or a half inch of rain today, you don't need to irrigate as much as you would have done before. So that piece probably would work. I just I spoke with some of the advocates for this bill. I really feel like it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist here. I don't feel like it's one of those things that when they told me, well, we're comparing this to certain other places in the country, when I researched those other places, we get 23% more rain than those other places. So is this, again, it's a regulation for us, for farmers to do. And is it something that we really need, or is it something waiting for a problem? And I'm sorry to say this, I'm willing to work hard at, if this was a real problem, then farms should do it and do it well. But I mean, I've heard prices upwards of $2,000 to $5,000 a meter, and I know some farms that have 4 or 5 different pumps, and in order to have a meter, they don't use them all the same time. They may use this one today and that one 2 days from now and another one down the road. I mean, and you got to set up all those pumps at, $10,000 to $20,000 with meters to make it go where it's going. And where is it going to go from here? Who's going to monitor? What department is going to monitor the water usage? Is it going to go to the Department of Ag, and who there is going to do it? Is there going to be some kind of fine, or are we going to build in some kind of fine in the near future that says, oh yeah, you use 51,000 gallons a day for a month this summer. Now we're gonna kick you to another category. We got more stringent regulation. You're gonna get fined because you were over that limit. I mean, I just see so many rabbit holes in this whole bill that, if it was a problem, let's do it. But is it a problem here? And yes, we've had last year, when you look at the drought figures, the bottom third of the state got way more rain than they have in the past. The middle part of the state was almost right, and the upper Northeast Kingdom was very dry. So we're all over the place, right? And I just don't. If we could not have this bill, it would be great with me. But if we need this bill, 50,000 gallons is a way better place to be. I just want to know where's it going to go? Are there going to be fines? Why do we really need this? I guess is my real question.
Next Tuesday, well, hopefully they're supposed to get that bill out between now and Monday out of Natural Resources. And we're gonna have it either in here Tuesday or Wednesday. And so I don't know if you'll be back in Vermont, Joe, but if you or Jackie or somebody from Farm Bureau wants to be in on that discussion, we'd be glad to invite you.
I am back. I'm leaving here at 2:00 to come home, and I'll just a quick look at my calendar. I can meet on Tuesday or Wednesday. I would be happy to be on. I think this is very important, especially for our veg and berry growers, small farmers. I don't think this hits a lot of I don't think if somebody wanted this to hit the larger farms, I don't think it does. I'm minimally, if it does. When you look across our state, we don't have a lot of pivot irrigation systems like I've seen out here in Iowa or in other places, in the South, especially Alabama and Mississippi, where I've been, and they can't grow anything without that irrigation. We're not in that ball game, but in order to be successful, we have to irrigate.
No, we're very fortunate on our climate, actually. For the most part, we're in pretty good shape. Are there other questions for Joe? I was thinking, Joe, do you have did you apply for and did you receive a wash station, a veggie washing station grant, or do you have one that you use to wash your veggies before they go?
We had a grant, I'm 8 or 9 years ago to build a washroom in our barn. We have an old dairy barn, and we converted a piece of it to a washroom and a cooler in order to do that. And we got some grant help to form the room that we're working in. that we wash in potatoes and beets and stuff during the winter.
Yeah, so that's working. See, some of the newer ones, I don't know if they, newer farmers didn't know we have, that grant supposedly still good and going. You know.
Very important.
Yeah, very important. And of course, somebody said this morning that they applied and they were told there was no money left in that fund to do that. Well, that was the first I'd heard of it. And so we've got to check on that to make sure there is money in that fund for grants for that purpose.
That'd be great.
So, well, if there are no other questions, I guess, thanks a lot for your time, Joe, and have a safe trip back, and keep us in mind for next Tuesday or Wednesday.
I will be watching if, and I'll definitely get on. Definitely be great. Hey, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I hope you're all successful in during the summer here and going forward. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, very good. Thanks again, Joe. Do we have any others on?
We do not. That is the extent of the witnesses for this morning.
So, well, so that wraps up our witnesses. Got some good feedback. Yeah, that was interesting and good.
Yeah, Bobby, I just want to say thanks. That was way more interesting and useful than even I'd hoped, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, that I thought it went very well, and got a few ideas on things that we might be able to do to that give these guys a hand for future. It's amazing, hearing from somebody that's only been at it a year or two to somebody like Joe that's been at it a long time, and another one was I've been doing it for 20 odd years, and seems like they run. They have an idea and just go for it, and they're kind of on their own, doing their own thing. And the guy that bought the old farm on Route 12, I think he said 12, that had no topsoil, had all been dormant, and now he's got 6 or 8 inches of good soils, and they seem to really be tuned in. Like that guy said, well, hell, I've got 6 or 8 inches of topsoil, and for every inch it'll hold X number of gallons of water, so they've done pretty well at it. The meat issue, though,
I'm just going to say that every single one of them mentioned that to some degree.
Montpelier's, the city of Montpelier's flood insurance should send that guy a check every year.
He's just in the wrong direction now. He should have been back up toward East Montpelier and up in there instead of down on Route 12. No, that damn meat thing, though, take a lamb.
We are still on.
And raise it to be a sheep, and then get it big enough so you can sell it for $400, and you end up with $50.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy that grows that little plot of cannabis, that plants it in the spring and sells it in the fall or whenever. I mean, golly. But it's hard to believe that that's all that would be left, and is $50. It sounds like trucking. Yeah, you work all day trucking, and if you end up with $50 at the
Did a
end
good
of the
job.
day, you've done well.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
I think we're all set.
anything else?
No,
Um,
I'm glad Joe raised the concerns on the water, although I have a lot of concerns
Yeah.
with that as well.
Yeah, well, I met with Chris again this morning. He
Will
was
we,
gonna
will we
get,
have possession or just flyby?
no, it's not gonna fly.
Okay.
I mean, it may fly in. No, but I told him we'd probably, needed a day or two to get testimony, from people of concern. And, he thought earlier, he thought he'd get it out yesterday. Today, he said maybe tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, for sure on Monday, so.
He's bringing his crew in to work on Mondays?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, he was.
yeah,
Oh,
they worked last Monday.
You remember, don't you?
I do, so I don't miss it.
You're gonna be back there if you
Well.
don't shape up.
I won't show up.
Well, hopefully, we can get some people lined up once we
Yeah.
all win. And, but if you think about today's meeting, jot any of those ideas down that were suggested where we might be able to help.
I like your idea of that sort of schematic, or I don't know what you want to call it, but,
Yeah.
okay, I'm interested in this. Here's who I call or email or visit. Yeah.
It seems like that wouldn't be that difficult to put together
I don't think so either.
and just have it at whoever answers the phone.
Yep.
Have it there, and that would be most helpful. Well, if there isn't anything else, we'll call it a morning and adjourn. And tomorrow, we have Ryan Patch coming in, the first thing in regards to the ecosystems and
Yep.
and all that. And so we'll have him in and see how that goes and how it's been going and go from there.
Okay.